Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Freedman, Matt F. The Oracle. Welcome to the Betting Pros podcast, brought to you by BetMGM, where you can get a risk-free bet of up to $1,000 when you use the highly original promo code Betting Pros with your first deposit. Right here to talk Week 13 NFL best bets is Jay Crocher, the lead betting analyst at NBC Sports. Jay, we are officially in December. Where does the time go? But how's the season going for you?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think it's an interesting NFL season when you have largely two teams in the AFC who are anchoring the whole league in a way with the Chiefs and the Bills. And then the NFC now we're seeing three teams, I think, really separate themselves in the Eagles, the Niners, and the Cowboys. But yeah, I mean, it's been a fun season for me personally, in a bit of a new role at the moment. So I'm looking forward to the last couple months.
All right. Well, so now I have a couple questions. First, I need to ask about the new role you mentioned there. So you were at PointsBet and now you've moved into the media side. Can you talk about that a little bit? Sort of like the transition, what inspired the move, and how you're adapting to it.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I was at PointsBet. I was the head of trading there, so working on everything from setting lines, moving markets, moving prices, analyzing clients. And now I work at NBC, where my job is to talk about betting from a content perspective. So I think I'm pretty well positioned to be able to do that, given my previous role. I was skewing to media stuff as well while I was at PointsBet, because NBC was a partner there. But look, to me, this new role is more fun, frankly. I don't have to write reports, I don't have to write emails, don't have to analyze clients and write up to senior management why we lost $1 million on the Eagles covering or whatever. So really enjoying the new role at NBC. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think the pod that you do, if it's not every day, it's almost every day, but I think you do it every day with Drew Dinsick, Well Capper. I think that's a great listen.
Yeah, we do the Bet the Edge pod every day, Monday to Friday. I'm on each of those days outside of Thursdays at the moment with Drew, who's, one of the smartest guys around and also just, a good guy to hang out with while you're listening to the podcast. So, highly recommend that everyone get involved in that.
All right. So yeah, good show to check out. And Will Capper, he was on the show earlier in the year. As you said, fantastic guy. You mentioned earlier, we've got these two teams at the top of the AFC, supplemented by these three teams at the top of the NFC. And I'm wondering, I talked about this on the Tuesday show, but I'd like to get your perspective on this. How it is that you would stack those teams, because those are probably the teams that a lot of people have in the top five. If not all of them are in the top five, certainly they're all in the top eight. But what are your your relative thoughts on all of those franchises?
Yeah, well, I think right now the best team in the NFL is Kansas City, and that's largely because of the injuries that Buffalo have on defense. I think that fully healthy, Buffalo are the best team in the league, but, with the injuries that the Bills have had in the secondary, now in the defensive line, we'll see what happens to Von Miller. Seems like he will be back, but with the injuries they dealt with to Poyer and Hyde in particular, I just don't think this Bills defense is as fearsome as it was at the start of the season. It's not like the Chiefs have an amazing defense either, but I think that they, with the level that Mahomes is playing at, I think it has always been overblown, the loss of Tyreek Hill, because it's still Patrick Mahomes behind a great offensive line, the best tight end ever, maybe, in Travis Kelce. And then they have enough with the wide receivers that they've just got enough kind of cards in the deck between Kadarius Toney and Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS and Sky Moore and Mecole Hardman. Some of those guys are going to show up enough each week that, they have probably the best offensive football. So I think the Chiefs, particularly if you're looking at futures markets, they should be the Super Bowl favorite because they have a cleaner path to the 1 seed than Buffalo, which is now, with just that one bye available, is so crucial. So I would go Chiefs 1, Bills 2, and then, Niners, Cowboys, and Eagles. I think that they're all the same team to me. I think that the Niners might have the highest ceiling when they're fully healthy because they have arguably the best defense in football. And then, once we have all of McCaffrey, Debo, Jimmy, Kittle, Ayuk, all healthy and 100%, I think that offense has the potential to be kind of ridiculous. Whereas, with the Eagles, we've seen that their troubles defensively. Also, I don't think that Jalen Hurts is perhaps at the level of Dak Prescott when Dak is fully up and running. I think that's close, but I still think Prescott is probably the best quarterback of those three. So the Cowboys, they've had random weird games this year, but for the most part, I think they're right in that mix as well. So those three, can't really split them. If I was forced to, I'd probably have Dallas the best, then the Niners, then the Eagles. But what do you think of that order?
I have them ranked exactly the same way. And for me, there's a little bit of a teardrop between Dallas and San Francisco and the Eagles. I have, let me see here. It feels like it's probably a little too high, but I have Dallas as 6 points better than an average team on neutral. San Francisco, 5.75, Philly, 5. And then Kansas City and Buffalo ahead of them. Kansas City, I have 7.5, Buffalo, 7.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. And I think it is fair to have now. Like, I do think there probably is a little bit of separation between Dallas and the Eagles, just on what we've seen the past few weeks. I think that also the way the Eagles struggled against the Colts is a little bit of a concern, given what the Colts did against the Steelers. And the Niners, to me, it's just mainly a question of health there. And we're going to get into that game. But, like, is Jimmy okay with the knee, or is that like an MCL sprain that's just going to be hidden the rest of the way? What's going on with McCaffrey's knee? What's going on with Debo's whole kind of lower body? So that would be the concern with the Niners there. But fully firing, I think they have the potential to be the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So this morning I published on Betting Pros my projected spreads for every game. And per usual, I established betting positions early, but there are still some games that I like. And Jay has some bets that he likes as well. So that is what we're going to cover for the rest of the show. And I want to get us started out with definitely not the Super Bowl, but a game that people are going to be watching with some anticipation. And that is the Browns at the Texans. And let me just make sure that I'm looking at the most recent lines here. This number is still 7. And man, I got to say, it feels disgusting, but I am betting on the Browns in this spot as 7-point favorites. And I grabbed this early on the look ahead line at 5.5, because even then, before these two teams played in week 12, I didn't think there was much of a chance that this line would be below 7. So I logged it at 5.5 in the Betting Pros app. And here comes the plug. The Betting Pros app, where you can sync up with sportsbooks, get free betting advice and picks, and track experts' line movement and your own bets. And you can set alerts. We monitor all the major sports books, including BetMGM. Use the promo code Betting Pros for your $1,000 risk-free bet at first deposit. That was the plug within the plug. We monitor all the sports books. So when one of them has lines that move and it hits a threshold that you set, you can get an alert and make the bet. So download the app today in the Apple or Google Play Store. Okay, so enough of the reads here. I can actually get into talking about this game. Again, it feels disgusting to be betting on a road favorite of 7 points or more in general. And then especially to be betting on a quarterback who hasn't played in a year and a half, and then all of the other things that are surrounding this game. But, Jacoby Brissett, I thought he did a pretty good job filling in for Deshaun Watson to open the year. This was the best year of his career. He was, I would say, above average, like conservatively above average. And in some metrics, he was actually like pretty good. He was top 10 in composite EPA and completion percentage, number 14 in adjusted yards per attempt, number 7 in ESPN QBR. But I still think Watson is unquestionably better. I have him as 4 points better than Jacoby Brissett. He might be rusty in his first game back to action, especially new team, new head coach, new teammates, new offensive system, but he is still an upgrade on Brissett. And in his 2020 campaign, he was number 1 in the league in passing yards, number 2 in adjusted yards per attempt. In his absence, the Browns have had a top 12 offense, maybe even a top 6 offense, number 6 in EPA per play, number 4 in offensive DVOA. I think it's unlikely that the offense is worse with Watson, and it could be significantly better. And as for the Texans, they're the worst team in the league. I don't think there's any question about this. Now, in theory, this is their Super Bowl. They could have a larger home field advantage than usual. Like, I imagine that it will be a pretty hostile environment for Deshaun Watson in Houston, given everything that transpired and the departure with the Texans. So for the team more than for Watson, I think this is, the hashtag revenge game. but I don't think that actually matters. Like even as a backup quarterback, Kyle Allen is a subpar player, and now he's the starter for the Texans. Their offense is lifeless. Their defense is horrible, and they might be without number one cornerback Derek Stingley, who's been out for the past couple of weeks with a hamstring injury, didn't practice yesterday. I'm skeptical he returns this week. So unfortunately for Houston, this matchup to me points towards a big win for Cleveland. Again, this number is 7. I have it projected at 8.25. And given that I can get it on the key number of 7, I do feel pretty decent betting it. Jay, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I would be pretty shocked if it closes 7, to be honest. I think this line should be -8.5. And the thing with Deshaun, I think that the Browns are the most interesting team in the league, which is weird to say because they're 4-7. But at the same time, I think that just between the talent that they have outside of the quarterback position, and then Deshaun Watson, who last time we saw him was playing the top 5 quarterback level, and then you just throw him in, he is clearly the most high variance player in the NFL the rest of the way. He could be an MVP level player the rest of the way, and he could be way worse than Jacoby Brissett. We just don't know. But for this game, I don't think it really matters because I don't think that he's going to be asked to be an MVP candidate because the Texans have an outlier bad run defense. And, now they get to go against Nick Chubb and one of the best offensive lines in football. So I think that, the Browns, they should be fine in this spot. To me, one of the weirdest things of the entire season is why Cleveland's defense has been so bad.
Yes.
I just don't really understand why they're 29th in DVOA on defense when they have Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, and they've gotten a really good season out of Newsome, and Denzel Ward's been terrible for some reason. John Johnson just hasn't been the guy that he was in Los Angeles. So kind of keep on waiting for them to just turn into an average defense, and, maybe it will happen. Also with 12 weeks in, and that hasn't happened. So that gives them a lot of upside. So really interesting team the rest of the way, and I think they should be able to handle the Texans.
All right. Well, another team that is really intriguing and in the same division, Baltimore. And this is a game that you are looking at, and I believe you are on Baltimore here at 8.5. Talk to me about what you're seeing in this game.
Yeah, I think this line will close double digits. I have it -10.5. I think that Baltimore, their offensive issues have been a little bit overblown in terms of the lack of receivers that Lamar has. And yes, that definitely limits their ceiling the rest of the way, but it's still Lamar Jackson. He gives you an incredibly high floor on offense. And you've still got Mark Andrews, who's a top 3 by any definition end in the league, and Devin Duvernay and Demarcus Robinson, who, it's not like the second coming of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but they've been fine. So I think there's enough there on offense. Against the Denver defense, that definitely isn't what it was at the start of the year. They lose Bradley Chubb. Pat Surtain has been lit up lately in ways that he wasn't getting lit up at the start of the season. And I just think this Denver offense is just completely hopeless at this point. Russell Wilson is playing like a bottom 10 quarterback. There's not enough on the offensive line or skill positions to compensate. So Baltimore are the number 2 team by DVOA. Denver are the number 26 team by DVOA. So I think that Baltimore will have enough here to be able to cover an 8.5 point spread. What do you think?
Yeah, I have this projected exactly at 8.5. It's interesting. Normally, if you like a larger favorite, more than a touchdown, I would say qualifies as a larger favorite. Normally, if you like a larger favorite, you also probably incline a little bit more to the over. But this game it is so disgusting. You wonder how did the Broncos score points in this game? And the Broncos, you mentioned some of the exploitability that they have in their defense, but it's still, I'd say top five defense. This is just an under team. And so even though I do like the Ravens to win this game, and if I had to bet on them at 8.5, which is where I have it projected, I would still go on the Ravens versus the Broncos. But even at 39.5, I still probably like the under more than I like either of the sides. I mean, the Broncos I think they're at 1-10 in terms of their over under. So they're 10-1 to the under in terms of totals. That is just unfathomable, but they're a team that's built for it because they've got a great defense and just an absolute worst in the league type of offense.
Yeah, I think that this is it's the perfect spot for a Wong teaser to be able to take it from 8.5 down to 2.5 because the total is 39.5. So it's just it's the perfect spot, particularly if you're like me and you like the Ravens -8.5 anyway. So it's also maybe the biggest coaching mismatch of the week, I would say,
Yes.
where John Harbaugh is clearly one of the best coaches in the league, and Nathaniel Hackett is out there doing his Lionel Hutz impression every week. So, yeah, I like the Ravens in this spot. I think it will close higher, but certainly the teaser options, get it through 7, through 3, down to 2.5 is also pretty appealing.
Yeah, I like the call on the Wong teaser there. I think that's pretty sharp. And yeah, if this line continues to move up, grab it now. You know, that now is the time to grab it if you're looking to tease. All right. So another game that has caught my attention here. The Giants hosting the Commanders. Giants, let me make sure I have the right line here. 2.5 is the number that I am seeing in the market. And you know, it's moved up. So moved against the Giants. I was the moron who bet this line earlier than I probably needed to, but man, I still like this line here. And you know, trends, whatever. Sometimes there might be some signal there, but Daniel Jones is an underdog. He's been pretty good. 23-14 against the spread as an underdog, 8-3 against the spread as a dog within division. And, you know, looking at this matchup here between the Commanders defense and the Giants offense, that defense is the strength of the team for the Commanders. And it's good. It's not great. And defenses that aren't either really great or really bad, like defenses that aren't, you know, an outlier in some way, they're all kind of, generally speaking, in my opinion, like on a continuum. And the Commanders, they do have a defensive edge over the Giants offense, but it's not a massive edge. In EPA per play, the Commanders defense is number 7. The Giants offense is number 11. In total DVA, the Commanders defense is number 11. The Giants offense is number 16. Like, there's not a wide gap in quality, in my opinion, between these two units. And even when you look at the matchups of passing and running game, I don't see a large edge for the defense. The Commanders defense is number 9 in dropback EPA. The Giants offense is number 12. In rush EPA, the Giants offense is number 8. The Commanders defense is number 5. Again, like the Commanders, they have a small defensive edge. I don't think it's enough to explain the spread. And then you look at the areas where I think the Giants definitely have an edge. They're at home. They have 3 extra days of rest because they played on Thanksgiving. They could be healthier, given that if you look at the Wednesday injury report, right tackle Evan Neal, center John Feliciano, tight end Daniel Bellinger, and cornerback Fabian Moreau, all of those guys who missed last week, they were able to open this week with a practice. And as a strategist and decision maker, head coach Brian Daboll, probably better than head coach Ron Rivera. And then you have quarterback Daniel Jones, who is unquestionably better than Taylor Heineke. And again, Jones, as an underdog, has performed well in that situation. So if you give me a divisional matchup between two teams that are roughly in the same tier, and I think they are in the same tier, I would give the edge to Washington, but it's not, again, a massive edge over the Giants. You give me a divisional matchup between two teams in the same tier, but I can bet on the team with the better coach and the better quarterback as a home underdog, I'm probably going to do it most of the time. So that's how I'm viewing this game. Jay, I don't know if you have any opinions on it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's not just because I'm a guest on the show. I do agree with you 100%. I think that this line should be Commanders -1, so at 2.5. Look, it's not a massive edge, given that we're talking about under a field goal, but it is definitely an edge. And I think you touched on it. The main thing is with the Giants injury report. Like, they got to the point against the Cowboys where it's just not viable. Like, they're a bad team already, and then they're just losing everyone on top of that, and mainly in the secondary and the offensive line. And you mentioned the names Feliciano, Evan Neal as well as full practice. Fabian Moreau, who with the Dory Jackson being out becomes even more important. He probably gets the Terry McLaurin matchup. And I think the other thing with the Commanders, who are somehow 7-5, that has kind of been lost in the wash, is that Taylor Heineke's terrible. He's a dreadful quarterback. He's a bottom 5 quarterback in the NFL, and it's been the defense that's carried them, and they're just getting enough on offense. But yeah, I think with a bit of additional rest, with the coaching advantage, playing at home, and also, like, if you like the Giants and you think they're going to win, then you should bet on Brian Daboll now to win Coach of the Year, because his odds will plummet and shorten significantly if they win this game, if they get to 8 wins somehow, because he is doing the most with the least at the moment. So yeah, I'm definitely with you on the Giants.
I love that call. The forward-looking future call. That's fantastic there. All right, a game that might be the one I'm most looking forward to this week. We have the matchup of the Dolphins going on the road to San Francisco. So a matchup of two guys who know each other really well, and Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan. And I think there still might be some value in the sides, but the total is where you're looking here, under 46.5. Talk to me about how you see this game playing out.
Yeah, I don't understand why this total is so high with all the injuries on both offenses. And to me, the big thing, and maybe the biggest injury to watch for the last 2 months of the season, is Teron Armstead.
Yeah.
Because the Dolphins are a different team without Teron Armstead. It happened even against the Texans, where as soon as Armstead went out, Tua was getting sacked on 36% of his dropbacks. That's absurd. He was averaging 3 yards per dropback. They just look like a completely different offensive line. The backups and Shell's not great. So I think that going up against Nick Bosa and co without Teron Armstead is going to be a problem for Miami. And also, if you look at the Niners offense as well, I mean, we talked about it before, but, Jimmy G is banged up. McCaffrey's dealing with the knee. Debo had the hamstring. Now he's got a quad contusion. A little bit concerned there against the Miami defense, which is, perfectly possible and still, I think, has a ceiling to get to when Xavier Howard starts playing better. So I just look at all of this, look at all of the injury uncertainty, and I think that the under is the play here. I'm very concerned about Miami's ability to score against this San Francisco defense without Teron Armstead.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, Teron Armstead, right. Multiple injuries, the toe, which has been lingering all season, and then the pec, which, was thrown into the mix recently. And then Austin Jackson, the right tackle, he's out too. Or, it looks like he could be out again. Didn't practice with the ankle injury on Wednesday. So they could be missing both starting tackles, which that's bad enough. And then on the other side, for the 49ers, they could also be without guard Spencer Buford, in addition to all of the other issues that they're dealing with on offense. So I can see it. I think people would expect an offensive matchup given, the intricacies of the Shanahan offense and what they can do when they are fully healthy. And then given everything that we've seen out of the Miami offense, but these are teams that are injured offensively and two coaches who do know each other really well. And I think that familiarity can also lend towards a lower scoring game. So yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. I think it was a little bit kind of lost in the wash that the Niners scored 13 points against the Saints defense that is getting better, certainly, and was elite last year. But with the level of talent, they should be scoring more than 13 points against the Saints. Certainly, I think that with the injuries building up, that offense isn't going to be what it will be at the end of the season. And I think that if you're looking at futures and the long play, I think that Miami with Armstead there, that team can win the Super Bowl. I think they have that much talent, particularly on offense, that they would be the team in the AFC most likely to shake up the Bills or the Chiefs. I'd probably, with this Armstead injury, I'd stay away from that until you get through the Bills game, which I think that they're going to lose now without Armstead and playing in Buffalo. But, if Miami drift out without Armstead to plus 1,200, plus 1,300 to win the AFC, then I think that's definitely a bet. I think this team has a lot of ceiling the rest of the way.
Yeah. So this is kind of correlated with the idea of Miami winning the AFC. And that's like a separate thing from Miami finishing as the number 1 seed. But, there's this idea that if things break right for Miami, voters might have a little bit of Mahomes fatigue. Maybe Tua would win the MVP. I'm not there. I think if Miami actually somehow gets the number 1 seed, I don't think Tua would get the full credit that another quarterback might get if his team were the number 1 seed. I think you would see Mike McDaniel as coach of the year, and that is how they would maybe honor what the Dolphins had achieved. And maybe you see Tyreek Hill get offensive player of the year, but I don't think we would actually see Tua get the MVP. But do you have any thoughts on the MVP market and Tua as a potential candidate?
Yeah, I don't. Just Tua missing those 2.5 games basically. I think that's insurmountable in terms of his counting stats versus Mahomes. Mahomes is going to have 1,000 more passing yards than Tua, and he's going to have a lot more passing touchdowns as well. So I think Mahomes is a bet at his current price. To be honest, he's around minus 150 in the market. I think it should be more like minus 250. I think if Mahomes gets the 1 seed, which is clearly a favorite, then that basically knocks out Tua It knocks out Josh Allen, knocks out Lamar, Joe Burrow, all of these guys. I think the most realistic candidate to beat Mahomes is Jalen Hurts, and that's a pretty uninspiring dark horse, to be honest, because yes, you look at all the numbers, and for the most part, the most deserving candidate wins MVP, but I think voters will have the same issue I have, where it's like, are you going to vote for Jalen Hurts MVP over Patrick Mahomes when you clearly know that Mahomes is better and he has the narrative without Tyreek Hill, and he's going to have, like, he's going to flirt with breaking the all-time passing yards record. So I think Mahomes, barring a complete catastrophe, is going to win MVP, and he would be my bet in the market. I would have Hurts the second favorite just because he might go 16-1, and then Tua and Allen would be kind of tied for third.
Yep, I hear you there. All right, so another game that I want to look at here is, let me get to it, Raiders hosting the Chargers. Raiders plus 1.5. And by the way, another plug coming up here. Speaking of the Raiders, the moment has come. For weeks, I've been talking about the free signed Josh Jacobs Raiders jersey, courtesy from our friends at Pristine Auction. And what a time to give it away. Right after last week, he went off, dominated on the ground, and totally trounced my dynasty team of record, by the way. Maximal pain. I couldn't have been more wrong about Josh Jacobs entering the season, and I have definitely paid the price for it. But you will not have to pay for this free signed Josh Jacobs jersey. And by you, I mean user, this is such a mouthful, OH2NU 5FD5U. You are the winner of the jersey. Please get in touch with our customer support agents at mailbag at fantasypros.com with your mailing address and your proof of subscription to the Fantasy Pros channel, and we will hook you up with that jersey. We'll ship it to you. Again, the winner is user OH2NU 5FD5U. Congratulations to you, and congratulations to me on getting through that and now being able to talk about this game. Raiders plus 1.5 hosting the Chargers. Jay, there was a point not all that long ago where I swore off betting on the Raiders at any point in the future. I believe that was when they failed to cover against the Jeff Saturday-led Colts, and I just hated myself for having bet on the Raiders. Of course, now I'm going to hate myself because I'm doing it again. I'm betting on the Raiders at plus 1.5 going against this Chargers team. And the Chargers, they're better. I don't think there's any question about that. But this is a something of a matchup-specific bet. You know, you have world-beating running back Josh Jacobs. He's dealing with a calf injury, but he had the same injury last week, played through it, totally dominated. He was able to open this week with a limited practice on Wednesday, so I expect him to play on Sunday, and I think that's the difference in this game. The Raiders have a top 12 offense, a top 6 rush attack. They have a massive edge against the Chargers defense, which is horrifically vulnerable against the run, so much so that it actually does impact their overall performance in yards per play and points per game. And on the opposite side of the ball, the Chargers offense, in theory, it should have a large advantage against the Raiders defense, which in my unit power rankings is dead last in secondary, like the number 32 secondary in the league. This Raiders secondary is atrocious. That said, I'm skeptical that the Chargers actually will exploit that matchup in a maximal way. They have a dink and dunk type of pass offense, and they're probably not going to have Mike Williams, who is, you know, more of their downfield threat, who's played just 6 snaps since week 8. And so with the running dominance, I think the Raiders have the largest edge in this matchup, plus 1.5 at home. I actually have this Raiders -1, not, you know, a massive difference going through 0, but a little bit of a difference there. So +1 versus the -1. And I gotta say, like, it's a year for underdogs. Derek Carr, 51-42-1 against the spread historically as an underdog. Underdogs this year, 99-75-4 against the spread. And in division, underdogs this year are 33-20 against the spread. So I am on the Raiders in this spot. It's just sort of a, you know, hold my nose and bet it and don't watch the game and just hope that it turns out in my favor at the end. But Jay, I don't know. Do you have any opinions on this?
Yeah, this feels like a good value bet that absolutely is going to lose, right? It just feels like it has to be bet and it has to lose. That's just how it is. I mean, I think the Raiders are one of the most underrated teams relative to public perception. Like, this isn't a bad team, and the market for the most part, has valued them this season. There have been some weird lines where people have been like, why are the Raiders 2.5-point favorites in Tennessee? But the market has always believed in the Raiders, and I think it's because of the talent level in that, the passing offense, Derek Carr is playing better, Devontae Adams is a top 4 wide receiver in the game, and Josh Jacobs has been the best running back in football so far. So I think the offense clearly has the talent. It's just, to your point, the pass defense is just not salvageable. Like, they're never going to be able to defend the pass. They don't have the personnel. Max Crosby, it's him and no one else really. And he gives you a little bit of upside and variance on third down, being one of the 5 best defensive players in football, maybe. He's that good and certainly the most underrated for my money. But yeah, I think the best thing that the Raiders have going for them is the Chargers injury report is not encouraging for Los Angeles, where they've got Derwin James, he didn't practice yesterday. Bryce Callahan didn't practice. Trey Pipkins didn't practice. Khalil Mack didn't practice. That's just the rest day, but they are banged up. Mike Williams also, he didn't practice. And to your point about the dink and dunk, I interviewed Austin Eckler about this a few weeks ago, and I was like, well, you've got, and it's not like a unique question, but you've got Justin Herbert in his arm. Like, why don't you guys throw deeper more often? And he's like, yeah, we don't want to dink and dunk, but we have to because there's no Rashawn Slater and our wide receivers are banged up all the time. And so this is just kind of what our offense has to be until we can get to that point. So that point probably isn't going to be this week because they're banged up. So yeah, I would be taking the Raiders at the current price, but because they're the Raiders, you just expect it to lose.
Yeah, that's fair. And to your point about it being a value bet that's just destined to lose, I bet this first at 2.5. So given that I have the closing line value on top of that, yeah, I just feel like I'm already looking at a loser here.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so final game here for us to talk about, Green Bay. And all of this is under the assumption that Aaron Rodgers is playing. On the Pat McAfee show, he said he expects to play. The head coaches said they expect Rodgers to play. So I'm assuming, even with the thumb, the broken thumb, even with the ribs injury, assuming that Aaron Rodgers is playing here, going against the Bears, who potentially know Justin Fields. So, in that regard, large edge for Aaron Rodgers, who historically has absolutely owned the Bears. I mean, he's told them to their face that he owns them. You are looking at the Green Bay team total here of 24.5. I like it. What do you see here?
Yeah, I just think that this Bears pass defense might be an outlier level of bad after what Mike White did to them last Sunday, putting up 31 on them in the rain, his first game starting for the season, after how badly had Zach Wilson and the Jets passing game and entire offense had struggled. I think this is right now, it was already a bad pass defense, and now you're without Eddie Jackson. Jaquan Brisker didn't practice yesterday. He still got the concussion. Kyler Gordon as well. He didn't practice. So I just think that this Bears defense is just not tenable at the moment. I think the Green Bay offense is also a little bit underrated because, yes, they have struggled a little bit to put up points, but the problem with Green Bay has been their defense. Offensively, they've been efficient enough. Rodgers hasn't been at the MVP level, clearly, but Rodgers has been fine. He's been playing at an above-average quarterback level. David Bakhtiari's back, and he's David Bakhtiari again after a bit of a slow start. Christian Watson's emergence now gives them a legitimate threat to go opposite Alan Lazard, who's like the poster boy for sneaky good wide receiver who's perfectly solid. So I just think that with Rodgers playing, which we fully expect him to, that this Green Bay offense in conditions in Chicago, like it's going to be cold, but not expecting rain at this point. So I think that the Green Bay offense should be able to get over 24.5.
Yeah, absolutely love it. I'm with you on this bet. All right, Jay, awesome to have you on the show. Thanks so much. Tell the people where to follow you on social and where to find your work, anything you want to plug.
Yeah, so you can follow me at CroucherJD on Twitter, on Instagram. I do, as you mentioned, the Bet the Edge podcast with the great whale capper, Drew Dinsick, basically every day of the week except for Thursday. I also co-host the Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry 6 days a week, Monday to Friday at noon on Peacock, and then Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And then the second hour on Sunday runs on CNBC. So, yeah, a lot of places to find me for better or worse talking football.
All right, fantastic. He is Jay Crocher. I'm Matthew Freedman, Matt F. The Oracle. Check out Betting Pros and Fantasy Pros for all my work. Best bets, player props, fantasy favorites, player projections and rankings, and more. If you like the show, please rate and review on your favorite podcast app. That is going to do it for the Week 13 Best Bets edition of the Betting Pros pod. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck and see you next episode.